And the other one is, if you build it, they will come. Like you've probably heard that, right? Absolutely false. So ridiculous. Like I've been a technical person for like the entirety of my life. But it was only when I started working at a large company as a sales engineer. It's so much harder to sell things than to build things, and it's so much harder to market something than it is to build something. Every time that I build something, I ask myself, how am I going to market this? How am I going to let people actually know that it exists? Because there's so much noise on the internet. There's so many products on every single thing. How do you get people to know about the great things that you're building? That's the other part. So if you build it, they will come is as false as it can get.
On today's show, I'm talking with Martijn Smit. Martijn and I met several years ago when we were brainstorming a new project together, and I knew then that he was someone I needed to stay connected to. He builds and ships new products better and more efficiently than just about any entrepreneur I know. In today's episode, you'll hear all about that process, how he filters his ideas down to only the things worth building, how he avoids shiny new stuff syndrome and instead has created intentional, thoughtful structure to his workflows that enable him to remain productive and effective at getting new and useful tools to market. We all have 100 ideas floating in our heads. Martijn actually builds them. Our interview is packed with actionable insights that can help you do the same. Here's my interview with Martijn. Martijn Smit, we have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining and taking the time.
Thank you for having me. I'm pretty excited to be one of the first.
That's right. Early on, getting a couple episodes here queued up as we go for launch. And I had to hit you up because you are a classic, very natural fit for this show. I'll probably have talked about this in the intro, but you and I have worked together. We built a project together recently. And one of the things that attracted me to you first that I was like, man, I need to be working with that guy is like how much you get done. Like you are incredibly efficient and you pump out products very, very often, which is not how I typically operate. I bake things a little bit more fully, which is a blessing and a curse. You ship things faster, which is a blessing and a curse. There's pros and cons to both. And so I'm really excited to dig into that today specifically. Let's take one step back though first and kind of talk more broadly about your business experience and in the startup world. And I know you were with the bigger company first, but walk us through some of that why entrepreneurship and building startups felt like the right path for you rather than something more traditional and working a 9-to-5. Why did that fit for you?
Basically, I've always been a builder. That's one of my things, like starting in high school even. Like I still remember the first... like the course on programming that we got, like we started to make games and all that stuff, and that kind of like hooked me and basically like guided me through the entirety of my adulthood and a small bit of my childhood. But I like making things appear, and I like making things appear that are useful, and then getting also it into the hands of other people. Mm-hmm. And then getting that feedback from those other people. That's one of the main things that really drives me. I like building useful stuff. That's the main driver, I think.
That's awesome. And you do that very, very well, building useful things, things that like should and have a reason to exist. I think a lot of people build just for building's sake. But That's interesting to hear kind of your background. Did you ever build anything physical? Have you ever worked with hardware, actually, out of curiosity?
Yeah, plenty things. Like I used to have a 3D printer. I still do, but it's kind of gathering dust. Mm-hmm. But like just being able to print something out, stick like a Raspberry Pi in it, or stick like an LCD screen onto to put it, or an e-paper plate display as well these days. It's just something like, I don't know how to describe that. Like if really like putting something into the physical world that really like lets you touch it. That's
Mm-hmm.
just a very different experience than building software. It's measurably harder, which is why I've not focused really on building something that is in the physical world, because like mostly software is much easier and much quicker to iterate on. Like one of the things that I thought about and also did a lot of research in is in a physical mute button. I think you will remember that personally,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which we talked about, where we wanted to build something on top of what is now Mute Deck. That's one of my software products that basically simply controls conference meetings, lets you like press a button on a Stream Deck or a Loop Deck or even a touch portal these days, which is a software layer. But it lets you press a button and then like go on mute on Zoom and Teams and stuff. I'm relying on third-party platforms in that sense
Mm-hmm.
because I've got it onto a Stream Deck and a Loop Deck and other decks, which has its benefits, as in like other they do the hardware things. They do the hardware things. I just have to like make sure that the plugin works in that platform, etc. But it kind of like you give a little bit of control away to that platform, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're
Totally.
hosted on that platform. You're related to that platform, as in discoverability and things on your product. Kind of depends on how they do marketing and how they do plugin promotions inside their own marketplaces and things. And if you got your own physical product, then like you have full control over that.
Right.
But it also comes with all of the added complexity of having to build something physical
Well,
and
for
having to
sure.
build.
I remember with that project in particular, when we first connected on a physical mute button, like that was definitely a project that I have never delved into that space. It's always been software for me. And I was like, well, maybe like this could be kind of a venture into what it looks like to manufacture and hardware. And I ended up having to say, hey, Martijn, this is not the time for me. I'm not moving forward on this one because of that exact reason. It was like, I wanted to do the hardware piece and it was just too much at the time, too much investment, time and financially. And you were like, cool, I'm going to move forward with the software piece. And so that's what you did. And so that exactly speaks to your point, is that hardware can just take a lot more time. And as you have built these kind of various products over the years, hardware and software, one question that I think is really helpful for people to gain insight about how you do what you do and how you build products and how your mindset around that has adjusted over time is, what is one kind of, we can say, gospel truth that you thought was a hard and like a true fact about building and startups that you've had to reevaluate over the years?
Can I pick two or?
Absolutely. Yes.
Like the first thing is it's got to be perfect. That's always been my thought at the beginning. I'm a perfectionist by heart. It always pains me very much if I need to release something with something that I already had in mind but had not been able to build yet.
Yep.
But I needed to get the like the update out. That pains me, but I'm getting over it. And the reason why is because like if something is got to be perfect, then it's going to take 10 times longer instead of 2 times longer,
Yep.
typically. Plus, people don't care if something is perfect or not. People care whether something is usable or not.
Mm.
I mean, it has to work. That's one of the things, obviously. But it doesn't have to work in every single different scenario that you can think of that like maybe happens one in a million times, those,
Right.
those type of things. But I used to, or I still do, think of all of the scenarios that could happen. But then I like focus on the top percentages that actually will happen with the software that I built. So there's absolutely no way that you can guarantee that something is always going to work in every single different scenario. That's just fact of life, unfortunately. Unless you have a very big team, unlimited funds, and yeah, go for it. But yeah, So perfection is one of the things that I've let go over the years. And the other one is if you build it, they will come. Like you've
Mm.
probably heard that, right? Absolutely false. So ridiculous that
Yeah.
it's oh my. So just as a general sense, like I've been a technical person for like the entirety of my life. But it was only when I started working at a large company as a sales engineer, which we used to call a systems engineer back then, just to make it a little bit more techy.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my first introduction into like actually having to sell the product that you are building or representing or whatever you're doing with it. It's so much harder to sell things than to build things, and it's so much harder to market something than it is to build something.
Yep.
That's one of the things that I'm focusing on very heavily currently across all of my products. Like every time that I build something, I ask myself, how am I going to market this? How am I going to let people actually know that it exists? Because there's so much noise on the internet. There's so many products on every single thing. Like you can think of the most craziest thing that you probably don't, that you never heard of and you think will not exist. But do a deep dive, I guarantee that some of these products do exist already. You just have not heard about it yet, which is all about the marketing, right? I mean, how do you get people to know about the great things that you're building? That's the other part. So if if you build it, they will come is as false as it can get.
So yeah, I'm curious to know for you and the businesses you've built, what's one of the biggest bets you've taken, and what did you learn with that bet? And yeah, and did it pay off?
For one of my own businesses, let's put it that way, WhatPulse, that's a productivity tracking tool, and it now currently has a consumer and an enterprise, so business B2B brand.
Pretty recent, right? The enterprise piece in that.
Pretty recently, yeah.
Okay.
We've been building it for a couple of years, like me and another partner, but it's been kind of like GA, if you will, for
Mm.
about a year now. But the consumer part, that's what that's what I've had for the last 20 years. Even like I started building that when I was in school. That's a different story. But just focusing on the consumer part, on the consumer market in that app versus just kind of like scuttling the consumer app and just pivoting entirely to B2B. And the reason why is because that bet basically like I made a conscious decision to split my focus between the consumer and the B2B market places. And the reason why I did that is because the consumer app market, application software is way more unforgiving than the B2B business.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's very interesting. Like if you talk to enterprises, they want everything that you can offer and probably more and all those features that they need and blah blah blah. However, if something goes wrong there or where something doesn't work entirely as it should, they typically shrug it off and like make it work instead of like a consumer. They try something, it doesn't work. Maybe they hit the retry button, but if that doesn't work, then it's like gone, like
Uh-huh.
bye bye software.
Uh-huh.
So it's a very good way to like as a canary in a coal mine test things out, if you will. So basically, I've had to split my focus between the consumers and the B2B, and that also meant that I had to build in a lot of differentiation between the consumer client and the enterprise
Totally.
the enterprise client app, meaning that I've got a shared code base between those. Not to get into too much details, but it's one application, and then you've got the enterprise version versus the consumer version. So it adds complexity. It adds yeah, split focus basically. but the benefits that I get from it is humongous. Like WhatPulse also already has a very big user base in the consumer space. I'm little over 500,000 users there, so it's very good to use that as a canary in a coal mine. Not that I'm like pushing out incomplete stuff and hoping that
Sure.
it breaks and then
Sure.
fixing it in flight, but it's a very good way to test things out before I then like introduce it into the professional version. So that's the benefit that I get from doing those things. But like I said, split focus. Also on the marketing side, obviously. I mean, marketing towards consumers and enterprises are way different. Different platforms, different messaging. Everything has to be different. But yeah, so far it's been panning out. But it has to succeed before I can actually like say that this was a good bet. So it's an ongoing thing. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, for sure. But it's headed in that direction. It sounds like it sounds like there's a lot of positives and you're excited.
It is. I'm overly critical on my own, like with standards and goalposts that I sometimes also keep moving, which is probably recognizable for more people because like I had that same conversation with a lot of other founders as well. Like you decide something that you want to have as a goal for a specific year, but then it falls a bit short. So you just move up the goalposts to the other year, tripling the actual metrics that you put in those goals, right? But yeah, it's definitely headed that way. Like I mentioned, like the consumer version, I'm very excited about. Almost getting to like 600K users there, which is it still boggles my mind that that there are so many people using that software and the website as well. And the enterprise version is definitely getting there as well. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's great. As you think about advice for founders, you've had so much experience doing it. What is a question that founders don't ask enough as they get started, but they should?
I think the best question that I can think of is how little features do I actually need to make this work? As in, you have an idea. Let's say we're talking about a streak counter, like one of those things that you see where you have to fill out every day something, and then you extend a streak, and then you get like badges and cool accolades and all that stuff. I had one friend of mine, an entrepreneur, built one of those, and then another friend just a couple days later came with the same idea. I did connect them, but like it was pretty interesting to see one build versus the other one. So one of them went all out, right? I mean, they built a streak counter, they did badges when they had like a 10-day streak, a 100-day streak, etc. Did like a fancy chart and overview and like reminders and notifications whenever they reached a certain goal of them. And the other one just built a form, a cool like visualization of which days that you had the streak. And they launched it within like a week, and the other is still working on it. So what is the least amount of features that you need in order to make your idea work? That's also something that I always ask myself before I actually make or start working on something technically. And there's so many people out there that keep building without actually pushing it online.
For sure. And I know specifically that was an area that you and I, as we co-founded this company that we just recently launched our product, I know a lot of times we were, I wouldn't say at odds, but we had different opinions on that sometimes, on different features. You were like, this feature isn't needed for the first version. I was like, I really think it is. And depending on the feature and where we were at in building it, we would take one person's opinion over the other. But I tend to be on the side of build it more fully. You tend on the side of ship it. And I thought it was a really good push and pull there, because we both need to be stretched in both those areas. And to be honest, this is so funny. You'll laugh because when I talk about Wonder Machine, our project we did together, I tell people like it was an intentional exercise that I embarked on to practice the important art of MVP, because I don't do that piece well. And like that, to me, what we shipped is like dangerously more MVP than I usually ship, than I would be comfortable shipping. And for you, you're like, dude, let's get this out the door. It's been long enough. And so it's funny because what to me is like, oh my gosh, that was really a stretch for me. I intentionally worked on this project and shipped it faster than I would like to try to grow that muscle, because it's important to do that. And you were like on the other side, like, man, how much longer is this going to be? So it's just funny.
Yeah, I think to give some perspective, I think we built it in about a year or something.
Yeah.
It was not a primary focus, like it was a secondary project that we worked on.
Yeah, that definitely made a difference.
Like in my world, what we launched is basically like a version 3 or version 4 already of everything.
Yep.
And like I said in the beginning, like people don't care if it's perfect, because nobody knows what perfect is. Only you know what perfect is, because you've got that picture in your head. And yeah.
And often a feature, if you don't fully build it, you're like, well, what about, maybe we built point A and B, but what about C and D? And people don't even know C and D can or would exist.
No.
So to not build it. Yeah.
That's the same advice that I got when I started public speaking as well. Like people don't know what you're going to say, so if you have to skip a chapter or skip a slide, even if you're doing slides, they won't know.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's true. Let's think. So again, as we continue to kind of focus on the startup world more generally, what's a myth about startups that you could debunk that could be helpful for people starting out?
Maybe, one of the things that always comes up in discussions with friends that want to start companies and start startups is they always, like, maybe 80% of the time they start asking, like, how do I raise funds? Like, how do I get to a venture capitalist and then get my foot in the door and get money so I can start building? One of the things that I'm very heavily invested in is in bootstrapping. Probably a word that's overused, but basically, like, if you can build it yourself, if you can build it with a friend, just get together, start building it instead of mapping out like your investor pitch deck and all of those things. Like, unless you want to completely change the paradigm of like an entire market or an industry, or if you need to build like massive hardware in order to make that idea happen. Like, if it's software, don't start with fundraising, start with building. That's the main thing that I'm always trying to convey.
Yeah, for sure. I think that people get so caught up. I mean, we all know this. If you've been in the entrepreneur space at all, listen to any podcast, read any books, you hear a lot of like, stop building your business card, stop creating your logo, just start building. And it's hard to hear because it's hard to build. It's easy to create a logo. It's exciting to create a logo. It's fun. It gets you motivated. But to like dig into the requirements and like, okay, what features do I need to build is hard and abstract. And so it's easier just to sit on those first pieces. But you're absolutely right. It does not take funding. It's funny. With my other project right now, Dwellspring, I am starting to flirt with that space of like, okay, is funding what I need next? Do I need cash for my next phase of growth? And as I've tried to start to get into that space and talk to people, so I've started connecting with venture capitalists and angel investors and some private equity people. And it's so funny, everybody in that space, as I tell them where I'm at and like, so yeah, I don't know if funding's what I need next, but here's where I'm at. Like, what do you think? They always say, okay, that's great. Sounds like you have some traction. That's great. Are you sure you want money? Like, be really sure that this is the question you want to be asking, because money is not for everybody and not all money is created equally. And like everybody in that space, I guess the point I'm making is they caution me against taking those steps because it's just the loss of control, the equity dilution. There's a lot of things to consider. And if you can, everybody I've said like, well, so far I've just supported on my own. And they're like, good for you. Like you have 100% of the company. I'm like, well, yeah, like almost like I haven't raised any money is kind of how I started. But I see now that that's really a badge of honor, that's like a really, really good thing that I've kept control of the company because so many people just want to go get funds and you lose control.
Yeah. And there's so many stories out there when a company goes bad. Like if the product doesn't hit market fit or something like that.
Or it does, but not at the level that you set the expectations for with your investors. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you get a very awkward conversation where they want to like sell you entirely off and then move on themselves, you know?
Yeah.
And typically these days, especially with AI and all those things, building something is cheaper than ever. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm obviously talking about software, but if you start building your ideas out, you can get so much done without a lot. Like a very big team is not necessary anymore these days. It's just a fact. Yep. Again, unless you want to change the entire world, obviously.
Totally. There's caveats, of course. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you need to set the level of expectations and set the level of your aspirations and then match them accordingly. But 99% of the time, you can do it yourself.
Totally. No, I totally agree. And that's really good perspective, I think, for people as they think about what it looks like for them to get started themselves. Let's pivot a little bit to your specific experience in kind of this idea of like serial entrepreneurship, launching a lot, shipping products often. You're always coming. I just feel like, man, every time I check LinkedIn, it's like, hey, I saw this problem. I needed something done. So I built a little menu app for it, or I built a little desktop app that solves the problem. And you're always shipping something. But I'm sure even how many products you build, you've got 10 times more ideas than that. Probably all day you're like, oh, that would be a fun product to build. That would be useful. What's your process to narrow those down to actually determine what would be worth pursuing, worth building?
Basically, what I do is I've got a big database in Notion with all of the things that pops into my head, or whenever I come across something that I have to do twice or maybe 3 times, just as a threshold. So if something
Martijn never does anything more than 3 times before building a product to solve it.
You cannot catch me doing something like that, because otherwise it's not something that is worth your time anymore at that point. Like, sure, you have to do it, but if you're doing the same thing over and over again, that's the same definition of insanity, right? If you do something over and over again. So automation is heavily on my side when it comes to thinking of ideas, but I plug all of those into that Notion database. I let it sit. That's one of the main things. If it pops into my head again, I add like a small checkbox to it saying like, oh, I've thought about this twice already. And basically, like, there's also a timestamp whenever I make those or enter those ideas. If the idea is year plus old and I've not thought about it twice yet, it goes away. Like I archive it. Then it basically is labeled as could be cool. Maybe if you've got time, but who's ever got time? So it's fun, interesting, but not needed enough because you're not thinking about it more than once. So every time I think about it again, there's a checkbox, and then basically I start feeling it out with friends and family. Thinking about if I solve this for myself, or other people actually use it or running into the same problems, or is this something that other people also can use, basically?
Yeah.
If it's not something that other people can use, I might label it as an internal tool. So I've got my own backend and stuff where I've got some custom apps. So if I really need it, I just build it into that internal tooling. So it doesn't have to be polished. It doesn't have to be like pretty and all that stuff. It just needs to work. That's it. But yeah, then once I get some ideas that I know people are going to be able to use, then the building basically starts on the side, because I do that slowly, as in like it's still a poke and prod into like, is this idea really viable? Like, because during the building cycle, I also start looking at if it already exists, how good are those existing products, like what are their price points and things. That's also a good indication of are people willing to pay for something like this. So I take that all into account. I do start building a little bit, like maybe a couple of hours a week, like something to distract myself from my main focuses. And then once that all aligns properly, then at some point I get motivated enough to actually like do like an end sprint, and then basically like finish a beta, send it out to those friends and families that have said, yes, I can use this. And then get feedback on that beta right away. I explicitly say beta because it's like, it's not polished. There's no landing page. There's no like a real user journey
Truly
yet.
only function, not much form.
Yeah, exactly. And people that I send it to are mostly technical, so they can usually figure stuff out from there. But yeah, I mean, that turns into like a feedback loop, and then if it really works with them as well, like if the product is something that they start actually using and are even willing to pay money for it, because that's one of my questions that I always have. Like, would you be able to pay something for this?
People can love it, even find it useful, and say, but I wouldn't buy it.
Yeah, exactly. And that could also like pivot it into like a free product. I've got a bunch of those where I just put up the idea, the product, put it online. Don't add a payment subscription thing or whatever, and just use it for myself, and those friends and family can start using it. But I'm not going to be focusing on like marketing and selling things in that sense. So it kind of filters through a lot of these, or runs through a lot of these filters, and then I think like maybe 20%, which I actually start developing, actually get to the point where I launch it.
20%, interesting. Yeah. It's interesting hearing your process. There's a lot of formality to it, in the sense of there's structure to it. Like there's purpose behind it. You aren't just like making a list of your ideas and then just like perusing over them every once in a while and grabbing one. And I would urge listeners to really pay attention to the last 5 minutes, whatever your last bit there was, talking through that, because you do this better than anybody I know. You find the right ideas, you build them, you get them to beta or get them to market, and you do a phenomenal job of that. And I think that people can take a lot of lessons learned from that. I want to ask you a question, another kind of back to like the idea of a myth of startups. Have you ever handed an idea to somebody either in beta or just brought it up at a party, family and friends? Has anybody gone and stolen your idea and built it themselves?
They've tried.
Oh, have they? Interesting. Interesting. Because that's a common thing in startups, is like, well, I don't want to start talking about it and asking about it and validating it. Someone's just going to go take my idea. And to your point of like, they've tried, which means they haven't gotten it to market, is like, that is an unfounded concern. Like, it's hard to go build products. So if people would have done it, they could have done it, they would have. And it's okay to bring ideas up and get them validated. People aren't going to go build your idea in general.
I think the main point in that entire section is like, your idea, however unique you think it is, it's not unique.
Right. So many other people.
99.9999999% of all of ideas are like additions onto other existing things. like you're thinking about something, automating a workflow or something. Like there are already a lot of things that can do those type of things. The idea of that your idea is one of a kind, is your baby, and all of that is not something that you need to really hold on to, because like one of the fun things that I sometimes do is I take my list, like things that I've thought about, and sometimes like every year or maybe 6 months or so, I sit together with one of my business partners, go through that list, like see what he's been thinking about, what I've been thinking about, and then every single call, there's always overlapping ideas there, which always like
that's a big tell.
confirms the thought in my head, like nothing is really unique. Even if you think you're always being influenced by other things, by other products, by other commercials that you see, etc. But then when it comes to actually making something,
That's right.
it's all about execution. Like it's all about how you build it. Does it work? And then at the end is all it's going to be all about marketing as well. Like, sure, you've built something, but do people know about it?
Yep, exactly. To our earlier points, I totally agree. I mean, I really have learned over the years to, like, if I have had friends come to me or coworkers come to me with an awesome idea and they're all excited about it, I used to get excited too. Like, oh, awesome. Are you like, do you have the entrepreneur bug? I'd love to, like, let's work, let's talk, let's maybe work together. And like, I've stopped getting excited about that because so many people just stop at that idea. And you have to have people who prove that they can execute on it, but not on everything, to the point we're just talking about, like on the right things and at the right time in the right way, which I think you've done really well. Let's move to the next question. That's how about, we've touched on this, kind of gone around it, but let's talk directly at it, of areas of your business that is not your specific expertise. You have created so many different things, and a lot of them probably sit where they're at, right? You put it out in the world, you get a couple people that buy it, you just wanted to build it to solve your problem. I'm sure that exists for a lot of your stuff, but the things you care more about, that you want to monetize, that you want it to do well, so you need to market it. Sales matters. The messaging matters. How do you handle those things that are outside of your expertise in the things that you build?
You learn about it. That's a simple answer, but it's very.
But not
difficult.
Everybody, even if they learn it, is not gifted at certain things, right?
No, but like saying that I'm gifting at marketing is a very big stretch. Like I'm definitely not. Like one of the things that I always do is like really sit down and define the products and even like people don't like using terms like these, but the go to market strategy and things like that define like what the product is, who is the product for. And then very much in detail get together with an expert as well. Like I reach out to a lot of people that are experts in those fields that I need expertise from, and sometimes even I hire people from those fields in order to like get me started with something. Like when I want to do a cold outreach marketing campaign for WhatPulse Professional, for example, the enterprise version of WhatPulse, I had no idea how to write like a cold email or like an ad that would trigger a response in someone. Like you want to have a response, obviously. I mean, that's what you're doing that for. So there's a couple things that I did. Like first I started reading up, like there's a lot of content on every single thing, on every single aspect of business out there. Never read just one thing, because like all of these things are typically opinions when it comes to non-programming things, because like everything else is biased and opinionated.
Totally.
So I read a lot. I take like a couple of weeks to familiarize myself with what it takes, how to do certain things, like what kind of sentence structure, or what elicits like an emotional response, those type of things. And then once I get myself a little bit more orientated, I go looking for people that know really know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, I connect with them to make sure that what I've learned and I've got in my head of doing with that campaign is actually something that will work. I kind of like, let's say it's a validation of what I want to do with the actual experts.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's way outside my wheelhouse, then I typically hire someone to do it. But then it becomes like a sort of like a mentee
Mm-hmm.
relationship where I try to like soak up every single thing that they do with the project that I get them, making sure that I learn every single thing that they do on their product, like thought process, like the reasoning around the things that they're deciding, even down to like how you would write like a cold outreach
Mm-hmm.
in this case, just to make sure that I soak up everything that expert can offer.
It sounds like there's a combination of things. You just said them, I think, of that you take the time to learn and you get knowledgeable enough about the space that you know the right questions to ask, maybe who to go find. And then the second piece of that is that that's really critical there for that process to be successful is your network. You've got to have people around you. That I mean, you can't. A lot of people don't have just someone who's like, oh, I need more information about cold sales. I'll reach out to so and so. And so to build a network of people around you that have various skill sets that you can tap them and ask for that expertise in the areas that you're learning is critical, I think.
Yeah, but even if you don't have a network like that, you can go online and find
Totally.
freelance experts. Like for marketing and cold outreach and sales and things, I've got a pretty good network when it comes to my former employees. Like I was in a sales
Mm.
organization, so I know a lot of people that do that for a living. But when it comes to like specifically one aspect of something of that process, for example, cold outreach, if I don't know somebody that has that experience, I just go online and find. Like there's so many entrepreneurs and freelancers out there that are willing to trade their time for you
Yep.
as well.
Yeah.
They usually have like a combination of I've got a lot of content, a lot of maybe training, courses out there, in combination with sort of like a consultation call.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many people out there, like technical, marketing, sales, even for like managerial things.
Mm-hmm.
You can find anything and everything when it comes to those
Well,
type of people.
that's a good reminder because I don't at all want my words to be taken as like, so your network has to be robust enough for you to be able to build out these ideas. There's a lot of people out there. That's a really good reminder who that aren't in your immediate network, but that you can go find and have that
Yeah,
expertise.
like building networks is hard. Like
It
very
is.
much an introvert, so I don't go up to
Right.
people on
Right. You're
conferences
not you're not
easily.
looking out for networking events in your area that you can go to a happy hour and
I get like sweats. I start sweating
totally.
whenever I think about it. Like
Yeah.
when I'm
Yeah.
there, it's fine, but like just getting into the threshold is always a little bit of a thing.
Totally.
But still, like you want to get something done, and you have the conviction in yourself in that idea that you're doing in your company that you're running, to push yourself to actually do that. But yeah, you don't have to have a extremely big network. You don't have to. You can find people.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. No, that's a good reminder. We've talked a lot about this idea of serial entrepreneurship, you shipping so often, and kind of what that takes. It takes a lot of discipline, it takes a lot of focus. We talked about that. There's a lot of formality to your process, a lot of intentionality. But a lot of people, I think, fight internally tendencies or habits or whatever that keep them from doing that, keep their time from being effective, keep them from doing that. What's something in you that you specifically have to fight against to make sure that you are moving things forward, continuing to progress, continuing to ship?
Distractions,
Yeah.
like the shiny new thing.
Yep. Totally.
Like the time of the recording, like AI everything, like there's a shiny new AI model. Let's try it out and blah blah blah. There's a lot of like indie hackers out there, solopreneurs that are focusing on AI products. I have to fight really hard for myself to not build something around that, because I've already got enough on my plate to fill my time, and even I've got too much on my plate typically. So that's one thing. That's one of the reasons why I made that process so diligent, because I found myself to be wasting a lot of time building things that either I was just too late, like there were a couple of these AI avatars at some point, and photo shoot apps out there. When I saw those popping up, and the image generating models and the training behind that, I was like, I could see myself building something like that. And I made the project and all that stuff. So I started to build a little bit, did not focus my entire time on it. But at some point, the market was already pretty heavily saturated with all of those things. And I just find myself wasting time at some point on these things. Like, what is your primary focus? Maybe have a secondary focus so you can switch between those if you need to have like a context switch refresh. But don't go into every shiny thing that you see in order to jump on the hype train and stuff. I mean, it's fun. Sure. It's fun to build something with something very, very new. But does it progress what you're trying to do in the long term? That's always something that I try to do. That's why I've got all of these processes around me. Like, I don't follow that every single time, obviously. I mean, we're all human. But making sure that I don't waste too much time, that's that's the main reason why I built those things, those processes around it. So yeah, distractions. That's
for sure. I think every entrepreneur goes through a period earlier in their journey that they build a lot of things, little bits of a lot of things, and you quickly find out of like, oh man, I need to get a broader, more overarching focus of like, what do I need to build that gets me to that? And I think that people that are able to bridge that gap can build effective things and actually get them to market, rather than just sitting down in the very first phase of a lot of different stuff.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the 12 products in 12 months type mindset?
No.
Okay, so that's one of those mindsets that are gaining a little bit popularity, because like it's pretty easy to do as an indie hacker. You just like make a small product, put it out there. But basically, the idea is to build one product and launch it every single month of a year. But basically what happens is you build something, you launch it, and then you never look at it again, because you need to build, the next one, or you start building next one. And it's so funny, because like if you've been around long enough in that community, then you see that those people typically don't really make it. Like, and that makes sense, because building something is not that difficult, especially these days. But getting people to know it, like market it, and then also have customers on it, make sales for it. That's the hardest part.
Yep.
And if you don't leave any space for that, then you're definitely not going to be successful.
For sure. I haven't heard that kind of framework or that mindset, the 12 products in 12 months. That's interesting. Man, that would really force you to keep moving forward, wouldn't it? Yeah. Geez, a product a month. Let's shift to again, maybe a more broad question. I think this is just really helpful and really insightful for people to get kind of a peek into your mind. Is imagine you woke up at the start of your career and you have all the knowledge and experience that you have now, but you only have $1,000 in a laptop. What do you spend your first week doing?
I would probably get a real job first. Like $1,000. That's not much. Like you've got a mortgage to pay or rent.
Well, less than the idea of what the actual dollar amount is. Meaning you don't have much money. You can't support yourself. So what do? You're saying, yeah, go get a job.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. Yeah, that's absolutely viable. And to be honest, it's probably my answer is to go get something that supports me and then hustle on the side. Yeah.
Yeah. Like one of the biggest things that I did, and that I thought about when I was creating things at the beginning, like, am I going to build it on the side of my main job and then pivot at some point, exit from my main job and make like the side hustles my main job? So that's exactly what I did. But it was a very I had that discussion with myself for maybe like 3-4 years before I actually made that decision. In the meantime, I was building on the side. If you're just starting out, especially as a solopreneur, you need to have some risk profile for yourself. Like,
Totally.
are you able to maybe even move to like Thailand or something and then just live off of $10 a day,
Right.
and build your thing in that setting? Or do you want to have a little bit of more security, get like your regular paycheck and then build something on the side?
Yep.
As for the, like, if the $1,000 is like to pay for services and software that you need in order to build the product that you're looking at, that's going to take you a long way, because like every single thing is so cheap these days. Like even if you want to have AI attached to your processes, you can be done for like a couple bucks a month, and have all of those services that you need in order to build something. So
I think that your answer is very similar to what I would say. I mean, a lot of people are, I'm a hybrid. It sounds like you are too, in that I'm not just like entrepreneurship at all costs, do my own thing. You cannot pay me to have a boss. Like I can't do it. I have to be able to work for myself. And some people have that bug, and at all costs, they figure it out to work on their own. And then I did what you did. I went to work for Disney and just put my head down and did everything on the side, tried feverishly to do it before I started having kids, because I knew it would all, and it sure did. And so, yeah, like just built on the side and then waited till something had enough traction to be able to step away. So it's absolutely a viable answer. So last question. What is one tool, quote, or book that you have found indispensable to your professional or personal progress?
If I were to go for one thing, it would probably be Atomic Habits by James Clear. That's a book. It's one of the things that opened my eyes very, very heavily when it comes to like habits and also stacking habits, like doing specific things, also starting to be aware of that you're doing specific things, especially that last part is pretty eye-opening, because you don't know all of the things that you do. Sometimes you're just on autopilot, and then you are a couple of hours further away. But tweaking habits, making sure that you're spending the right things on the right time on the right things, that's one of the biggest things in my life that have made a lot of differences. And that book really opened my eyes on how to, first off, how to change specific habits, but also like get the insights into what are my habits, you know?
Yep. Being intentional about what you're doing, how you're spending your time, what actions are you taking. Atomic Habits is a great one. I know that a lot of people, because it's pretty new, and I know a lot of people, as they've read it over the last few years, it's changed a lot of their perspective. So that's great. Martijn, that's awesome. That's my last question. I really appreciate your time today. It truly was invaluable. You have a really unique set of experiences, and you've built some really cool stuff. So thanks for sharing all that insight with my listeners. I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely no problem. Looking forward to listening to this one.
You bet. Okay. Well, take care. Thank you.